In the third part of Davis's speech, we have him talking about how the Constitution doesn't say anything about wealth or property, and that he's proud to represent the poor. So he switches gears and he talks more about the nature of government rather than the specifics of governing. He says this government in its very form and nature is not founded on the property, but on the people of the country. In its structure, it makes no recognition of property. It gives no power to property, no force to wealth, no influence to money. It allows no representation to property, and it derives no authority from it. The Constitution knows no difference between the rich and the poor. It treats all as equal, and we pervert its pure principles when, by our legislation, we give any advantage to the rich over the poor. The great doctrine of equal rights is the cardinal principle of the Constitution, and it rests not on property, but on the people, and on the people alone. He goes on to talk about the distribution of wealth created by the Public Lands Act. He describes the states individually are unable to pay their debts due to extravagant spending, and this is the purpose of the bill. But the money from the lands, again, he says, goes back to the state and not the inhabitants or the people. And he goes on. And who holds those debts against the state? Not the farmer, mechanic, and working man, for they have no state stocks, but the wealthy men of the country and others, the brokers and bankers, who have tempted and involved the states into these difficulties, and who, being now unable to obtain their interest or fearing it may soon fail them without our help, are urging and setting on the states to obtain this money from Congress, that they might get it in the end themselves. When these proceeds of the public lands are distributed under the law, instead of going to the people, they will go to the owners of state stocks, to corporations, to bankers and brokers, to the fund holding interests in America and in Europe. And this law will aid them, but not the people, and least of all will it aid those who pay the money into your treasury, the hardy settler and purchaser of the lands. So again, David states that the money will end up going to the people who need it the least, and not to the people who need it the most and deserve it the most, as the backbone of the states, the workers, inhabitants, the hardy settler. He says, as a member of this House, I have nothing to do with the property and wealth of the country, but to give it simple protection and to defend the Constitution and the people from its insidious encroachments, its high reachings after political and legislative power. Property did not send me here, nor am I its delegate, its advocate, or its champion. Davis states he has a higher purpose than to represent or be representative of money, that he's here as the representative of men, yes, of men as men. He says he's proud to represent the humblest and poorest men in his district, that it would not make him proud to represent the rich. So this is section 3 of the Davis speech from 1841, and he calls calls certain people who represent property and wealth, banks, brokers, stock owners. He calls them insidious encroachments onto the Constitution. And it hasn't changed at all. So his speech, of course, is accurate for even today, what's going on today. So that's something good to note, that since 1841, the encroachment has been going on. And if you were to ask Napolitano, he might say, because he said in the past that it was before the ink was even dry, when they had written the Constitution, they were trying to find ways around it. So next up is section 4, where they talk about, or he talks about in his speech, how the federal government wants to give back a certain amount of money to education, but in the end, the money they take back is more than the money that they give. So they give you like 5 cents, but they're taking 20. And that's going to be section 4 of the Davis speech. So like, share, subscribe, and check out the comments section for a link to this very interesting speech that was made back in 1841.